was an attempt in the 60s or 70s to create a sort of pro-male movement that advocated for healthy men and synergize some of the lessons from feminism at the time period, while also critiquing some of the negative aspects that are happening. It was called the Men's Meadow-Poetic Movement or something like that. This is a movement that grew out of Jungian psychology. It inspired a lot of modern pro-male people like Jordan Peterson. And it was interested in the topic of just what does it mean to be a healthy man? And if you read their books, it's very good stuff. King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, Iron John. It's really powerful stuff that appeals to like archetypes and mythology and male history to ask, what does it mean to be a healthy man? And one of the points they made was that, so the writing primarily in the 60s and 70s is like kind of the big development of the movement. One of the points they made is that, look, this toxic masculinity thing definitely existed. These guys actually invented the term toxic masculinity. It was invented by men to critique unhealthy men, not invented by feminists to critique masculinity. Certainly it's become that, but the term toxic masculinity was invented by men to hold other men accountable. So they invented this toxic masculinity term to say, look, this toxic masculinity thing was the norm. It's this over reliance on kind of the warrior archetype of masculinity without leaning into some of the other archetypes. And it creates problems. But at the same time, they noticed that there was a pendulum swing, and somewhere in the 60s and 70s, a lot of men, in an attempt to subvert that toxic masculinity archetype, leaned too far into this kind of feminine energy. They became too soft, they became too weak, and they didn't know how to stand up for themselves, which led to all sorts of new social problems. Toxic masculinity creates social problems, but so does weak masculinity.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Learn Arena podcast. I am your host, Trey Goff, founder and CEO of Learn Arena. With me, as always, is Gabriel Mitchell. He is our director of content and in-house philosopher. Today will be one of our culture/current event episodes that we'll be discussing with you guys. Today, we will be discussing a cultural issue where we'll be using an article from The Atlantic as a kind of jumping off point. The title of the article really summarizes the cultural issue as well, which is single parenthood the problem? And if so, should the government try to fix it? So what this article lays out is the details around why it is a problem that single parenthood has been on the rise and a steady rise for several decades. The article serves in part as a review of a book by an economist, Melissa Kearney, called The Two-Parent Privilege, that very recently was released. And the thesis of that book in a sentence is just that kids that were raised in two-parent, stable, nuclear family households do way better in life on every metric that might matter to you as a human than kids that were raised in single-parent households, irrespective of the gender of the single parent, whether they live with their mom or live with their dad. Doesn't matter. So this obviously is a big deal because the number of single-parent households is rising pretty quickly, and marriage rates are falling pretty quickly as well. And obviously we want our kids to have, in the United States and abroad, but this article is focused on the United States, to have every advantage that they can possibly have. Okay. So the article discusses several kind of issues with this. Is it an income issue? Is it a parent issue? Is it a cultural issue? And what do we do about it? And that latter part, especially, there's really no good answers to in the article, at least, but I'm sure Gabriel and I both have some fun ideas around this. So first, let's establish kind of, even in our own words, Gabriel, rather than just referencing the article as well, like, why is it important that a child be raised in a two-parent home, kind of a priori, and from your knowledge of the research from the article and elsewhere? What's your take? Why do you think it's important for a child to be raised in a stable two-parent home?
Yeah, it's such a uncomfortable topic because you necessarily, when discussing this, kind of have to make some moral judgments. We have to agree that it is a bad thing when childs have higher rates of anxiety or perform worse in school. And unfortunately, if you're a single parent, regardless of gender, and your children are having that outcomes, to some degree, there's a little bit of more responsibility there. Now, this isn't the podcast where Trey and I sit here and we dunk on single moms all day or something like that. You know, this is not another red pill podcast. There's plenty of people doing that for better or worse. And we can certainly empathize that there's all sorts of reasons why people end up as single parents. From death to abuse to manipulation, all sorts of stuff happens. But at the end of the day, regardless of how you got there, it is a problem that you're there. And that's really what we're talking about. It seems to be the case that children really, really benefit from having two parents. And while there is research that suggests that same-sex parents perform better than single parents, there does seem to be a lot of benefit from having that sort of male-female dynamic in the parents. Even if it's, a gay couple that's sort of playing those roles, there does seem to be a benefit to having those energies. And it makes sense to me intuitively. My father taught me more about emotional regulation and strength, where my mom taught me more about expressing my emotions and expressing love. And those are two different dynamics and two different lessons, so they're both important. And so it's really helpful to have parents that are around that can kind of guide you and teach you those lessons. And the data reflects this, as this article explains over and over again. Children who are raised in single parent households struggle with school, they struggle with early teen pregnancy, they struggle with all sorts of issues. And it's an issue. I don't know what the solution is. We'll chat about it, but it certainly seems to be a problem, and the data suggests it. And I think part of that is one parent just can't give you all of the lessons in life that you need, whether they're male, female, or whatever. There's a lot of lessons you need from both.
That's exactly right. I agree. And from kind of first principles perspective, this makes intuitive sense, right? I mean, you may learn life lessons if you're a male. You may learn life lessons about kind of how to be a good, upstanding man from your dad. You're also going to learn from your mother, right? How to treat women correctly, how to think about emotional regulation and express emotion correctly. There's just, because men and women are inherently different in many ways psychologically, there's a lot of different lessons that you need to synthesize from both parents. That if you're just with a dad, he's not going to be able to give you those female lessons. And if you're just with a mom, she's not going to be able to give you those male lessons. And that's not to say single parents are failures or they're doing anything wrong from a parenting perspective. They might be doing everything right. Again, this is not a red pill podcast. I grew up with divorced parents. I have direct relevant experience here. And my mom did all that she could, right? The problem is just that all that they can do, the sum of one still does not add up to the sum of two, right? It's literally just physically impossible. You can't do everything that two parents can do together. And we also know from empirical literature that the only thing you can do in life that has a lasting impact on increasing your happiness level day to day, even more than income level actually, is marriage. There's something about going through life with a partner, with a best friend, with someone to share both the ups and the downs with. And you can think, right, just thinking kind of one or two steps removed from that, if both people, the adults in the household, are happier on net, they're going to be better parents almost by definition. They'll be more patient with their child. They'll spend more time with their child. They'll do all sorts of things that a single parent might not do because they have so many more stresses and they have so many more things to deal with. Now, the article talked about how some economists think this might be just an income issue, but there's some research on this, and you can look into this yourself as well. But my takeaway from skimming the peer-reviewed literature on this is that it's not just an income effect. Income helps for sure. So, for example, if you have a two-parent household where the combined income is $100,000, but then you have a single-parent household where the income is still $100,000, that single-parent child is still going to have worse life outcomes than the two-parent household holding income constant. So it's not just an income issue. Now, what this is a result of, really, and the single-parent household thing is a second-order issue. The first-order issue is the reduction in marriage rates. And I think that's where I want to focus for a second, Gabriel, because I have a few hypotheses about why this is the case, and some of them the article discusses. First, as a general rule, women, overwhelming majority, over 80% of women, express a desire to marry up, right? All I mean by marry up is they all, almost universally, and women listening to this will understand what I'm referring to, they almost always want to marry a man who at least makes as much money as them, if not makes more money than them. And then from a social desirability and kind of social signaling perspective, they want a man that they feel is high value, high status, right? At least as high social status as them, if not higher. You combine that with trends in education and the feminization of education, which has resulted in women now drastically outnumbering men in earnings of bachelor's degrees, earnings of advanced degrees like master's degrees and other graduate degrees. Women are getting educated longer than men. And as a result of that, women are often getting higher paying jobs. Researchers call this the marriageability gap, where it's basically a man today has to do way more than a man in the past to earn what he's going to think is like a good wife, right? Because women's standards have been raised by their introduction into the workforce, by their domination of education and their increased education levels. And again, I'm not even passing any normative judgment here. Like the women aren't doing anything wrong. Like, of course they should get educated and of course they should get the job they want. That's fine. My point is just that there's this kind of intractable part of this that like women don't want to marry men that make less money than them and that are lower status than them. And by and large, as time progresses, women get higher status and earn higher incomes, and male incomes and male status are both dropping. So male average income has been stagnant, or in some cases down. The number of men that are up in the same income distributions as women has been flat to decreasing relative to women. So the problem's actually getting worse, not better. Now, am I saying like, oh, we fix this problem by asking women to marry men they don't want to marry? No, of course not, because that's not going to be a successful marriage in any case. Like that's not going to last. That's not going to be a built to last marriage, and it's going to end up in yet another single parent household. I think a big part of this problem, you all will not be surprised to hear this from previous episodes, is housing. I know I harp on housing as the panacea to everything, but I mean, it really is in a lot of cases, and this is yet another case of that. A lot of the reported stated reasons that people are delaying marriage, delaying childbearing, or not getting married at all, because they don't think they can afford it, because they can't buy a house. You need at least, a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, something like that if you plan to have multiple kids at a minimum, right? Without having someone living in the living room, or without having parents living in the same room as their kids or sleeping in the same room as their kids for the rest of their lives. And as zoning and planning regulations continue to restrict the residential housing supply in the United States, home prices continue to climb, and people, as a result, delay family formation or don't form families at all. So I would say, if I had to guess, right, I would say somewhere between 25 and 50% of this problem could be at least partially alleviated by radical housing reform in the United States and drastically expanding the residential housing supply so that young families and young men and women can form families and live in a place that they can afford and in a place that it is comfortable to raise a family. Now, this begs the question, right? What's the other 50 to 75% of this problem? And it's really cultural. This ties in very neatly with the fertility rate issue. The fertility rates are declining all over the globe. There's this very clear and strong relationship with, we see in the data that as a country gets richer, its fertility rate falls, which is a kind of paired, although orthogonal but related problem here. And so I really am at a loss as to what the solution is here, other than we need to figure out, other than reducing housing prices, which that's a given. That's my answer for most things. But even more importantly, we have to, and I don't know what the solution to this is, Gabriel, and I'd like to riff on it with you for a minute. The problem here, to put it bluntly and opposite of to take a stand against the Red Pill podcasters, right? Problem here is like modern men are failing really bad, like really bad. They're gaming all day. They're not finishing degrees at the rate women are. Their rates of entrepreneurship are roughly flat. I mean, they're just, a lot of men are just suck now. And I'm not trying to victim blame here. Like, there's a lot of reasons for that, right? Male loneliness is at an all-time high. Again, the education system by its very structure in and of itself is feminized, and women do much better in it because it is structured and it has busy work. It restricts kind of free activity, creativity, and the high energy type stuff men like to do. But besides the education point, like why do we think the marriageability gap exists, right? Like, why are men failing so hard, Gabriel? And what can we do about it? I mean, besides join Learn Arena, which you should do because we're aiming to solve this problem.
Yeah, it's such a big issue, and it's one of those very multifaceted issues. The housing point made me think about how many people I know who moved in with their partner very early on, and it was a huge disaster. And if you ask them, like, oh, well, why'd you move in together? Why did you guys break up once it got bad? It almost always has to do with housing cost. The housing gets more and more expensive, and so people are moving in earlier. Instead of moving in a more like appropriate sort of time frame, where they have chances to figure out the red flags and resolve issues, they move in very quickly because it's easier, and then they're stuck together because it's harder to break up because of the financial components. And so bad relationships seem to be incentivized almost, or at least the steps you need to take to have a good relationship are de-incentivized. That's one point I want to make, because that housing thing is huge. It really, the more and more you and I talk about this, the more and more obvious it is to me that that housing is like a central cultural economic issue that we're dealing with. And I agree with you that failure of men to be healthy men is a big part of this. We're very quick, we as in men, are very quick to kind of joke like, oh, that girl has daddy issues or whatever, you know? But at the center of the daddy issue is a poor father, is a bad father. And that bad father was a boy who did not learn to become a man. And it seems to be that many of the things that we culturally tend to blame women for, you know, they're becoming single mothers and making these problems, that at some point in the chain, there's a man who failed them along the way. And unfortunately, that creates rippling effects. And so you're absolutely right that young men need to step up and learn to be as healthy as possible. And sometimes that does mean cutting back the video games. I know it feels like such a boomer grandpa thing to say, but I don't know, man. What if one night instead of playing a video game you journaled and just expressed your emotions for a bit instead of trying to hide away and hedonistically play games or watch cartoons or whatever? You know, journal more. Talk to other men about the problems that you're dealing with. And just, you know, if you need to go to church, go to church. That's a great way for a lot of young men to start finding purpose and meaning and values.
And
I don't
finding
believe in
a partner, by the way.
Yes.
One of my closest friends that Gabriel and I work with, JC, he met his wife at church.
Exactly. Yeah, look, I don't believe in God, but it's very obvious that church has a lot of benefits to individuals. And now if church isn't the way to go, find some other replacement, whether it's a club or community or whatever. But, you know, young men need to be doing something to get their shit together. Because young men that don't grow up and become healthy, they become shitty fathers, they become shitty partners, they become shitty employees, they become so many shitty things, and it creates these rippling, damaging effects. And so, yeah, the housing thing is big, and the economics of it are well worth investigating further. But there is a big psychological, cultural problem happening to young men right now, and we need to start finding solutions.
That's absolutely correct. I hard co-sign basically everything you just said. Now let me take a different tact, Gabriel, and I want you to challenge this and push back on it. And this is an idea I'm kind of toying with. I don't fully endorse this or agree with it, but you hear it a lot in like the red pill manosphere space. Okay, so I'm going to give like the most extreme version of this that I don't necessarily agree with, and I want you to kind of give the pushback or agree with it or whatever you want to do. But I think this will be fruitful. So a lot of the red pill space argues something like the following. Feminism liberated women, right? And when feminism liberated women, it let a genie out of the bag, right? It opened Pandora's box, and we can never put Pandora back in the box, right? And that Pandora's box that it opened is now that women are in the workforce and they are entering leadership positions in institutions, they are shaping the culture of those institutions and the rules of those institutions to reduce the likelihood men can even participate. My favorite actual evidentiary example of this is college. So a lot of university staff is overwhelmingly female now, and there's just a very clear divide on things like free speech in those colleges, right? So roughly 70% of college-age women, including faculty of these a lot of universities, there's a recent survey about this, they agree with the claim that the speech or opinions or research that could in some way instill or create prejudice or harm, and define harm as broadly as you possibly can, to underprivileged, marginalized groups, whatever, should be banned, should be stopped from being propagated. Either the research should not be published or the speaker should be de-invited from campus, those sorts of things. And men, overwhelmingly, of roughly 70%, say the exact opposite, that free speech is important for seeking truth, and that therefore we should let the best ideas win, and no research should be off limits, and that it's our job to learn as much as we can about the world and then apply that in a judicious and ethical way, right? Just as a little vignette of an example. We also see this with the feminization of HR in businesses, right? Where women preferentially hire other women. HR departments are overwhelmingly female. They often side with women. There's a bunch of data on all of this. They often side with women in kind of employee disputes. I'm just giving little vignettes of kind of examples of evidence for the claim that a lot of our institutions have become feminized. I think that's a fairly incontrovertible claim. There's been a lot written about this, a lot of ink spilled about this. Now, the red pill, right, guys will like to take this and then say, And as a result of that, like, this is bad, right? That, like, we shouldn't have empowered women. We shouldn't have let women enter the workforce. We should not be encouraging female participation in XYZ, whatever it is. I don't agree with this, obviously. I think any like abrogation of human freedom, regardless of gender, is bad, right? But they do have a point insofar as the like feminization of society is at least part of the problem. So what do you say to the kind of the red pill diagnosis here, which, right, is like everything's feminized now, and we just need to try to create male only spaces and advocate for public policies that kind of reduce female autonomy, or advocate for cultural changes that reduce female autonomy, which, again, to be clear, I do not co-sign, but I want Gabriel to kind of discuss and push back on here, because this is what you're going to hear. The only other discussion you're going to hear about this topic, and why I'm bringing it up, Gabriel, is the Fresh and Fit podcast perspective, right? And I'm trying to push back against that some.
Yeah.
Also saying I don't know the solution either.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of truth to it. It's absolutely empirical that female domination in, say, the universities has caused problems. That's an empirical fact. It doesn't require too much analysis. You don't need to be some like manosphere red pill guy to acknowledge that fact. But it's also the case that feminism as a historical movement is much more broad than I think people give it credit for. The version of feminism that we see in those like angry blue-haired internet feminists is not what all feminism is. There is a tradition of what we call individualist or libertarian feminism that really is just asking, how do we remove the legal barriers? How do we remove the legal discrimination and just allow people to be free and allow them to decide what social dynamics work for them and their company and their community? You know, because some women do want to be more submissive is maybe not the right word I'm looking for, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Some women want to be more traditional, don't want leadership roles, while others do.
I think traditional is probably the right word.
Yeah, and while some do. And there are contexts where those are good or bad, and there's contexts where they're healthy and not healthy. But the most important thing is giving individuals the choices to make their own decisions. And the problem is a lot of contemporary feminist movements have kind of abandoned that individualist sort of libertarian tradition and favored a more collectivist sort of use the state to solve all of our problems type approach that unfortunately by its nature necessarily implies violence, implies rights violations and all these things. So that's kind of one point. Feminism is very broad, and I encourage anyone who is critical of feminism or pro-feminism to investigate a bit deeper into some of the history and different traditions. Because you may find that there's a particular version of feminism that you like more than others. And perhaps next time you're engaging a feminist in debate, instead of saying, oh, all feminists are evil and you're dumb, you can push them in a direction towards a healthier version of that idea. So that's kind of claim one. Another point I want to make here is that if it is the case that women are out competing men in certain industries, you could look at it, one perspective is to say like, oh, well, women are conspiring or doing something. Well, another perspective is that men are just failing to stand up and compete. If a woman's out competing you, you've been out competed, and so if you care about increasing men in leadership positions, well, then be a leader. I do not care about the red pill manosphere guy who has spent his whole life playing video games or whatever. There's nothing wrong with working in a grocery store, nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. But if you're a manosphere red pill guy who does work at McDonald's, you are not in a place where you get to complain about women in leadership positions. They didn't take anything from you. You're exactly where you belong because you haven't put the effort into being more virtuous and harder working. Another thing I want to mention is that there was an attempt in the 60s or 70s to create a sort of pro-male movement that advocated for healthy men and synergized some of the lessons from feminism at the time period while also critiquing some of the negative aspects that are happening. It was called the men's meta-poetic movement or something like that. This is a movement that grew out of Jungian psychology. It inspired a lot of modern pro-male people like Jordan Peterson. And it was interested in the topic of just what does it mean to be a healthy man? And if you read their books, it's very good stuff. King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, Iron John. It's really powerful stuff that appeals to like archetypes and mythology and male history to ask, what does it mean to be a healthy man? And one of the points they made was that so the writing primarily in the 60s and 70s is like kind of the big development of the movement. One of the points they made is that, look, this toxic masculinity thing definitely existed. These guys actually invented the term toxic masculinity. It was invented by men to critique unhealthy men, not invented by feminists to critique masculinity. Certainly it's become that, but the term toxic masculinity was invented by men to hold other men accountable. So they invented this toxic masculinity term to say, look, this toxic masculinity thing was the norm. It's this over reliance on kind of the warrior archetype of masculinity without leaning into some of the other archetypes. And it creates problems. But at the same time, they noticed that there was a pendulum swing, and somewhere in the 60s and 70s, a lot of men, in an attempt to subvert that toxic masculinity archetype, leaned too far into this kind of feminine energy. They became too soft, they became too weak, and they didn't know how to stand up for themselves, which led to all sorts of new social problems. Toxic masculinity creates social problems, but so does weak masculinity. If anything, that weak masculinity can create a lot of other problems, right? Those incels that like get fed up and go and shoot up some college or something, those are not strong men who work out and understand psychology and take time to be healthy. Those are weak men who have just been weak for so long that they forgot how to be healthy. And so they've decided to blame everyone else, and they go, literally take lives. And you can find it even in smaller ways. Weak men do things where like they're not reliable. A lot of us have had the experience of maybe putting together a conference or maybe an event for our church, and we're giving everyone tasks, and there's the reliable guys who are going to get it done, but then there's those kind of weak guys who you ask them to go put out chairs and they suddenly disappear, and it's excuse after excuse after excuse, and that's just weakness.
That's
And so
exactly
like I've
right.
said a lot here, but the biggest thing is that you and I are men, and we understand men better than we understand women. And so if we're going to ask what are solutions that you and I can advocate for and you and I can understand, it's be a healthier man. Explore those books like Iron John and explore questions about healthy masculinity. And you'll find that in doing so, you can help heal some of these issues, some of these gaps, some of these problems of female domination in certain industries, some of the problems of single parents, that healing masculinity is one of the very first important steps.
That's exactly right. And in fact, I'm going to continue on that trend, and then we'll call it, Gabriel. I'm gonna take what you said, run with it a little bit further. There's a statistic I saw from a friend of mine, Chris Williamson, a few days ago that really just crystallizes what Gabriel's talking about weak men better than any diatribe I could give, which is that for men under the age of 30, between the ages of 18 and 30, right at 50% of them in the United States said they had not approached or spoken to, like with the intent of trying to woo a woman in the last year. So 50% of men are quite literally, to put this bluntly, too afraid of the world to even talk to women at all. Okay. So first, let me dispel a myth for you guys. A lot of you are probably thinking, yeah, well, if I approach a woman and it doesn't go well, she could Me Too me, whatever. That's nonsense. I was in college from 2013 to 2017. I did a lot of things that I am not proud of in learning about the world. But one of the things I did, for better or for worse, for the last 2 years of college, I met a lot of women in person, at bars, in class, etc. I dated a lot of women, and this was like right when Me Too was kind of reaching its zenith, and it was fine. Just don't be a creep. Don't be mean. Don't be aggressive. Take no for an answer. Don't keep pushing after you get clear indications that she's not interested. But the other flip side of that coin is you got to stop being so weak. I don't know how else to put this, okay? Like, stop being afraid of rejection. What this really boils down to, I think, Gabriel, is so many men are just simply afraid of doing things. They're afraid of putting themselves out there. They're afraid of taking risks. They're afraid of taking action, of being men of action, of being men of agency. Because, oh, well, what if she says no and then she tells her friends she said no? What if she makes a sassy TikTok about this ugly guy that approached her at the bar and I know it was me? What if I try to go get that job in that new career and I get rejected 50 times? What if I try to start a solopreneur side hustle, a YouTube channel, a TikTok channel? I try to start a little small e-commerce business. What if I fail? And they're just afraid. They never even try because they're afraid of failure and they're afraid of rejection. And this really gets at the core of the failures of masculinity. And this is because masculinity has become more feminized. Women on average are much more risk averse. Okay. Like, this is the part of masculinity we have to take back. You have to start taking risks. You have to start putting yourself out there. You have to be able to brush off those rejections, to view them as nothing more than experiences to learn and improve as a man, and go out there and try it again the next day. And so you have to stop being weak. You have to stop being afraid of no. You have to stop being afraid of awkward, afraid of putting yourself out there. And the second thing is you have to stop being lazy. Okay. And I will say most men are lazy. Here's what I mean by that. If you're the dude who, again, nothing wrong with working at McDonald's, but if you want more for your life and you're working at McDonald's and you're like, oh, I didn't get a college degree. I don't know what I can do. I'm just stuck at McDonald's. Listen, the internet exists, dude. Like, even set aside Learn Arena for a minute, right? Like, Learn Arena is meant to be a solution for you in particular, the man who's kind of stuck. And we're building that for you right now. But even without Learn Arena, you can go take courses there's enough on Code Academy right now where you could spend $30 a month on Code Academy and learn how to code well enough to get a entry-level junior software engineer job making $60,000 or $70,000 a year in about 6 months of just self-directed effort. Okay. The several other e-learning platforms exist. Again, Learn Arena as one of them, but many others where you can learn almost any skill on earth. Or let's say you don't even, you think you don't have the money for that, which I will dispute, by the way. You have $30 or $40 to get some of these subscriptions that you're just spending on Diablo 4 or Baldur's Gate 3 instead of actually spending it on something that will benefit you. That's just you making poor decisions and being lazy. But two, even if, like, for whatever reason, your life circumstances, whatever, you can't even afford that, YouTube is free. And there is literally nothing on earth that you can't learn from YouTube. Khan Academy is free. There's nothing on earth you can't learn from Khan Academy. There's nothing stopping you from trying stuff. You can go build a website for free right now without even knowing how to code and sell stuff from that website that you buy on Alibaba or wherever else. You can figure out how to market it, how to get it in front of the people. The problem here is just one of laziness. We in 2023 live in a land, thanks to the internet, of effectively infinite opportunity. So the only reason you're not doing more with your life is because you've chosen not to. I don't know how else to put it. And a lot of you get caught in this trap that I've seen. If you listen to Andrew Huberman, you listen to David Goggins, you listen to Lex Friedman, you listen to Joe Rogan, you watch the hype motivational reels on TikTok and Instagram, and then you close the app, you close the podcast app, and you boot your Xbox, you boot your gaming PC. You get the dopamine hit of listening to it, and then you don't ever actually go do anything. Go do something hard. Go try to improve yourself. Go, and you may be saying, oh, well, I don't even know what to do. Part of the process is figuring out what you need to do. And the way you figure out what you need to do is just try stuff, dude. I'm sure Gabriel can empathize with this, but like, I've tried all sorts of random stuff. I tried day trading cryptocurrency when they were really cheap and I was only doing it with like $100. I worked in construction for a while. I was a heavy equipment operator. I worked at a cigar shop for a while, selling cigars. I've done all sorts of odd and end jobs. I tried drop shipping at one point toward the end of college. Like, you just try stuff. You literally just try stuff until you figure out one that works. The thing that will make sure you get a return on your investment is just a perspective shift. If you fail, that means you learned. Good, to quote Jocko Willink. And if you succeed, you made some money. Good. Either way, good, because you can move forward and improve from that. So I think the solution to this, coming back around to the core topic here of why the marriage rate has fallen and why single parent homes have increased, it really is a failure of men, of feminized men who have no conception of healthy masculinity, who are lazy and who are afraid to put themselves out there. And I don't know what else to tell you other than start doing it. And look, if you're confused about this, you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, like, Gabriel and I are happy to mentor. We'll do it to as many people as we can. Like, we're in the Learn Arena Discord constantly. You can get in touch with us easily. Join the Learn Arena Discord. We're happy to provide you guidance and feedback there. Gabriel and I have done entrepreneurial coaching sessions with several Discord members that want to start their own businesses. I'm helping one of our community members right now develop a really cool niche business idea he has, and I'm going to help him raise capital for it and everything, because he only needs like a couple $1,000. So we'll help you. Find people like us, find others. If there's a mentor of an industry you want to get in, I don't know how to tell you this other than to cold email them. You'd be amazed how often a well-written cold email works. But again, you just have to put yourself out there. You have to stop being afraid of rejection, stop being afraid of falling flat on your face, and just realize when you fall flat on your face, guess what? You get to get up again and keep going. And when you trip, you realize, hey, I tripped on that thing. I'm not going to trip on that again, and I'm going to do better next time. That's the key here. Stop being afraid. Stop being worried about putting yourself out there. Stop being lazy. You live in a land of infinite and a time of infinite opportunity. get off your ass and go do something. That's the bottom line. Get off your ass and go do something.
Yeah, completely agree 100%. Look, weak, unhealthy men become weak, unhealthy fathers, become weak, unhealthy husbands, which breaks down the family unit and creates problems for society. And if you care about society, or even more importantly, if you just care about your own goddamn happiness, then you need to stop being so weak.
That's exactly right. And I would be remiss if I did not give one last plug for Learn Arena here. In all seriousness, if you fall in this camp of like, all right, I heard you guys, I want to start doing something, you don't know what to do, we are building the platform right now specifically, and Gabriel can speak to this as our head of content, to have it as wide of a variety of subject areas for you to study as possible in an entertaining and gamified way so that you can figure out what you like. Go get on Learn Arena and take the grammar course, take the Washington history course, take the logic course, take the economics course, and explore different intellectual and academic subject areas so that you can figure out what it is that you like. And if you like one of these, you find you're really passionate about it, there's an infinite world of opportunity to turn that skill set into money, to refine it, and to figure out how to monetize it effectively. It just takes creativity and it takes hard work. And we're building Learn Arena literally to help guys like you. So all joking aside, all kind of kitsy stuff aside, like this is literally why we built Learn Arena, to build a new rung on the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder to help you, guy, that feels like you're lazy, that feels like you're afraid of getting out there. That's what we're here for. So join the Discord, sign up for Learn Arena, go take some courses, and we're happy to help you along that path in any way we can. That is why we're here. That's what we get paid to do. So with that, we will leave you all, and thank you all so much for joining us here. I hope this was at least a bit inspirational for some of you. And again, I cannot stress enough, go find our Discord link from our Instagram or Twitter, join the Discord, and Gabriel and I will be there. We're happy to talk any of you through any of this to help coach you as much as we can. We want to, as much as it sounds like I'm giving you tough love, we want you to succeed. Like I'm giving you the tough love in part to shock you into doing it, but we're happy to help you do it as well. So with that, thank you all for joining the Learn Arena podcast, and we will see you all again soon.